Hello there, I'm Kafi Khan and welcome back to my Android tutorials. In the previous video, we talked about list views and we implemented a custom adapter. If you haven't watched the video, please watch it. In today's video, we'll be talking about fragments. So, what is a fragment? Fragment is a portion of user interface in an activity. We can combine multiple fragments to build a multipane user interface. Fragments are modular, so we can reuse a fragment in multiple activities. And fragments have their own life cycle just like activity. So let's compare both. So when we launch an activity, there are a series of callbacks. So let's see them one by one. So first is on create. So this is when the activity is initialized. Then we have on start. This is when the activity is visible. Then we have on resume. This is when the activity gets interactable. It comes on the foreground. And then we have on stop. This is when the activity is not visible anymore. And then on destroy, this is when the activity is destroyed. Similarly, for fragments, we've got a series of callbacks. The first is on attach. This is when the fragment is attached to the parent activity. Then we've got on create. This is where the fragment is initialized. Then we've got on create view. This is where the view is loaded. And then we've got on activity created. This is when the on create function of the parent activity is completed. And then we've got on start. This is where the fragment is visible. Then we've got on resume, same way for activity. So this is where the fragment gets interactive. And then we've got on pause. This is where the fragment is no longer interactive. And then we've got on stop. Now the fragment is no more visible. And then we've got on destroy view. This is where the view is destroyed and the resources cleanup is triggered. And then we've got on destroy. This is where the fragment is destroyed and the fragment state is cleaned up and the fragment is gone. So let's get started. Let's create a new project. Let's call our project fragment introduction. So fragment introduction. Let's hit the next button. Again, we're going to keep minimum SDK as 15. Why? We know that, so that we can run our application on almost 100% of the devices running Android in the world. Again, let's hit the next button. Let's start with an empty activity. And let's call our first activity as main activity. Well, the Android Studio is building our project, so let's wait. Well, the project's built and it's ready to go. To use fragments, we gotta add a dependency in the Gradle, so let's do that first. So application Gradle, so coming here. So implementation, com.android.support, again support v4 and 26.1.0. Let's sync the Gradle. Well, we've just added the v4 support library. Sorry, there's a spelling mistake. So let's just remove this extra T and try again. So the Gradle is built and we're ready to add a fragment. So application or Java files or directory, right click, new, and let's add a class. Let's call it demo fragment. Okay, and let's just hit the OK button. Well, we need this to be a subclass of fragment, so let's add that. So extends fragment. As you can see, there are two fragment classes. One is android.app, another is android.support.v4.app. So we're gonna add this support library fragment. So let's select this one. And as you can recall, there were a few callbacks, so we're gonna override one, that is on create view. So on create view, and we'll be needing a UI file for our fragment, so let's create that. So project, resource, and layout. Again, right click, a layout resource file. So let's call it fragment layout, and let's hit the OK button. Let's close this and switch to the text mode. Okay, and let's get rid of this constraint layout. We'll be needing a linear layout. So let's add a list view. So list view with match parent, height, wrap content. Let's add an ID. So list underscore view. Okay, our UI file is ready. So coming back to the fragment file. So let's create a view object for this. Let's just inflate this view here. So view, let's call it view. So we've already got an inflator. So let's use that. Inflator.from. And in fragment, to get the context, you can just use an inbuilt function, get context. So it returns the context of your activity. So let's use that. So get context and inflate. So r.layout. And our layout was fragment layout, so let's use that. Again, a view group, so container, and no, we don't want to attach it to the view group. And we're just going to return this view. So let's do that. Again, we're going to use an instance of our list view here, so let's create one. So list view, let's call it list view is equal to, so view dot find view by ID, r.id, and list view. Okay, let's just copy paste it from that. Okay, it's probably some Gradle sync issue. We'll look into that later. Okay, so to populate a list view, we'll be needing an adapter. So let's create one. So let's just create an array adapter. Array adapter, let's call it adapter is equal to new array adapter. Now, as you can recall, it requires 3 parameters, a context, a layout file, and the list to be populated. So let's provide the context first. So get context and layout file. Let's use the predefined Android's layout file, so which was android.r.layout.simple list item 1. And we'll be needing a list to populate here. So let's create one. So project values strings.xml. Let's create an array here. So string array, let's call it Android versions. So basically we're just creating a list of Android versions here, just like we did in the previous videos. So item, so let's call it first item cupcake. Similarly, let's add more. So cupcake, then donut, eclairs, froyo, gingerbread, honeycomb, ice cream sandwich, jelly bean, Kit Kat, lollipop, marshmallow, nougat, and last, Oreo. Well, we've got a list of our Android versions, so let's just close this file and coming back to our fragment file. So let's just pass it here. So get resources, get string array r.array, and Android version. Well, our adapter is ready. Okay, we have to define the type of array adapter, so which is string. So let's define it here as well. So string, and the warning's gone. So let's just set this adapter to the list view. So list view dot set adapter. Well, our fragment class is ready. So coming back to the main activity. Okay, so let's get rid of this constraint layout. So linear layout, let's provide an orientation. So which is, let's say, vertical. Let's get rid of this text view and let's use a frame layout here. Match parent, height, wrap content. Let's provide it with an ID, say fragment container. Okay, let's just copy this. So coming to the Java file, we need an instance of that frame layout. So let's create an object here. So private frame layout, let's call it fragment container. Okay, let's initialize it. So fragment container is equal to find view by id r.id, and let's pass the id here. So our view is declared and initialized and ready to use. Okay, to use fragments, we've got two classes, fragment manager and fragment transaction. So fragment manager, it provides us with an instance of fragment transaction, and fragment transactions provides us with functions to add, delete, or replace a fragment. So let's create object for those. So fragment manager. Again, if you can see, we've got two fragment manager. One is for android.app and one is for Android support v4 app. So we're gonna go with the v4 app. So let's call it fragment manager is equal to get support fragment manager. Similarly, fragment transaction. So fragment transaction, let's call it fragment transaction is equal to fragment manager dot begin transaction. Okay, so let's create an instance of our fragment now. So our fragment name was demo fragment. So demo fragment, let's call it demo fragment is equal to new demo fragment. We've got an instance of a fragment. So let's just pass it to fragment transaction dot add, and so what it needs is, it needs two parameters. One, ID for the view wherever we need to add this fragment, and the fragment class. So let's pass the ID of our fragment container. So fragment container dot get ID, and let's pass the instance of our fragment object, so which is demo fragment. Okay, and let's just call the commit function. Well, Wiser is up and running, so let's see our application. So as you can see, application is running, and we can see a list of all the Android versions. Well, it doesn't seem like much, what fragments can do, but we'll see the power of fragments in the next video. So, see you in the next video. Hello there, I'm Kafi Khan and welcome back to my Android tutorials. In the previous video, we talked about fragments, some applications of fragments, and how to create one. In today's video, we'll be implementing one of those applications, and as you can recall, fragment can be used to create a multi-pane user interface. So today, we're gonna make that. Well, let's get started. We'll be using the same project which we used in the previous video. So, in our application, we'll be having two frame layouts to define two panes. So on the left pane, we'll be having a list of Android versions, and on the right side, when the user clicks on one of the list item, it shows the details corresponding to that list item on the right hand side. So let's design the second pane. So coming to our main activity XML file. So let's see the preview. Let's just bring it here. Okay. So we've got one frame layout. Let's just add another. And let's call it fragment detail container. Okay. So in linear layout view children, we can define an attribute layout weight, which provides a percentage of the screen for the width or height of the view item. So let's define that. So layout weight, let's give it 30, or let's just give it 3. Similarly, here, let's define layout weight, let's give it 7. Okay, and let's define the orientation as horizontal. And let's just change the width to 0 dp so that layout weight can override the width. So 0 dp. Let's give the height as match parent. So match parent, similarly, here match parent. And now as you can see, we've got our screen split into two frames, 30:70. Okay, so coming back to our main activity. So now what we are looking for is when user hits one of the items in the list, it should show the details on the right hand side. So we are looking for an on-click listener for the list item. So coming to the fragment, so let's define an on-click listener for our list view. So list view dot set on item click listener new. So again, this is also an inbuilt function of Android, just like on click listener. So for list, we've got set on item click listener. Okay, again, so whenever someone hits one of the list items, so anything inside this on click function will be called. So what we want is, we want our data to go from fragment to the activity, and for that we need to define an interface. So let's do that. So project, Java, our project directory, right click, new, and Java file. So let's call it Android version interface. Okay, let's hit the OK button, and this needs to be an interface. So let's hit the OK button and close this. Okay, and let's define a function here. So let it be on version item click. So void on version item click, and this requires a parameter string because we're passing string. So string, let's say Android name, or let's say version name. Okay, so our interface is ready. So let's just close this file. Coming back to our fragment, let's define an instance of that interface here. So which was Android version interface. So let's call it Android version interface, and we need to initialize this interface in on attach callback. So let's override that. So on attach, let's just initialize it. So Android version interface is equal to Android version interface, just typecast a context, and let's just add it in a try catch block just to avoid any exception. So try catch class cast exception log.e. So class cast exception, and let's just e dot to string. Okay, so our interface is declared and initialized. All we got to do is just pass our string version name to this interface when the list item is clicked. So let's do that. So Android version interface dot on version item click. So let's just pass the string. So we'll be needing the string from our view item. So let's get that. So string str version name. So we have a view instance here. So view, let's just typecast it to text view. Okay, let's just put it all in a bracket and get text to string. It's just the same thing which we've been doing in the past. If you can remember the login app, so we were just to get the text from our edit text or text view, we do get text, that gives us editable type, and we use toString to convert it to a string. Okay, let's just pass this variable to our interface function. So str version name, and our fragment is ready. So coming back to our main activity, we need to implement this interface here. So let's do that. So implements Android version interface, and we'll have to add the function here. So which was on version item click. Okay, so now whenever someone clicks on a list item in the fragment, so this function is going to be called, and it would send data from our fragment to the activity over here. Okay, so let's take it step by step. So let's generate a toast here. So make text, and let's pass the context. So this, and let's show the message. So let it be clicked, sorry, and version name. Again, the duration, so length, short, and show. Well, so let's run our application and see our progress. Well, our application is running, so let's just see the progress. So, well, this is our application is looking. So we've got 2 frames, one on the left, one on the right. And when I click on a list item, it should generate toast. So it shows clicked cupcake. Let's see with honeycomb. It shows clicked honeycomb. Well, we are on track so far. So now what we need is when the user hits one of this list item, it should show the version name on this right pane. So let's do that. So for that, we're gonna need another fragment. So let's create another. So project, Java, art directory, right click, new, and Java class. So let's call it detail fragment. Okay, let's create it. Again, we're gonna need this as a subclass of fragment. So let's do that. Extends fragment, and which fragment? Version 4. Okay, let's override the onCreate view, and let's create another layout for this fragment. So again, project, resources, layout, right click, new, and layout resource file. So let's call it detail fragment layout. Okay, let's switch to the text mode. Let's get rid of this constraint layout and use a linear layout. Let's provide it with an orientation. So orientation, say vertical, and let's use a text view here. So text view with match parent, height match parent, and let's give it an ID. So ID, version, name. Okay, so we are done with the UI file. So coming back to our detail fragment. So let's use that layout here. So again, we're gonna use the layout inflator. So view is equal to inflator from, again, to get the context, we can use the function get context. So get context and inflate. So let's pass our layout here, r.layout dot detail fragment layout, our view group, which is container, and no, we don't want to attach it to the root. Okay, so let's just return this view from here. Okay, well, we need an instance of our text view here, so let's create that. So text view, so let's call it version name is equal to view dot find view by ID, dot ID, and version name. Let's just copy paste it from there, which was version name. So coming back here, let's just paste it. Again, it's showing red, so it's probably some Gradle sync issue, so we'll come back to that later. Okay, now coming back to our main activity. So now what we want is when user hits an item, so we come to this onVersionItemClick function. So we'll be creating another fragment for our second frame layout. So let's do that. So we'll be using a fragment manager. So let's use our fragment managers. Let's just make it a member variable. So let's put it here. Let's remove this. Again, we'll be needing another fragment transaction object. So let's create that. Fragment transaction, let's call it fragment transaction, and fragment manager, begin transaction. So our fragment transaction object is ready. Okay, so we'll be needing an object for our fragment. So let's create that. So detail fragment is equal to new detail fragment. Well, our fragment object is ready. So let's just pass it on to the fragment transaction. So fragment transaction, replace, so r.id dot, which was fragment detail container, and let's pass our fragment object here, which was detail fragment. Well, or let's just call the commit to run this. So fragment transaction dot commit. And now you must be wondering, we've created a new fragment, but we haven't passed any sort of data. Well, to pass data from an activity to fragment, we can pass it through bundles. So let's create an object of that. So bundle, let's call it bundle, is equal to new bundle. Well, our bundle object is ready, so let's just set the values now. So bundle, set put string. So put string, let's pass it key value pair. So let the key be version name. So version name, and let the value be the version name string which is coming to the function. So version name. Well, our object is created and we've set the value, so let's just pass it to our fragment object. So coming here, detail fragment dot set arguments, and let's pass the bundle here. Well, so good, far so good. So coming to our detail fragment, so on create view, we can just get these arguments and set the values to our text view. So let's get that. So if get arguments is not equal to null, and get arguments get string, which our key was version name. So version name is not equal to null. Then let's just set it to our text view. So version name or text view dot set text, get arguments, get string, the key was version name, so let's pass it here. Well, we're good to go. Let's run our application and see what happens. Well, our application is running, so let's see. Okay, let's hit on the cupcake, and on the right hand side, as you can see, a version name cupcake is visible. Let's click on gingerbread. So gingerbread is visible. Let's click on jelly bean. So jelly bean is visible. Well, that's all we wanted to do, and we've achieved that. If you have any doubts, any queries so far, feel free to drop a comment and we'll go through it. See you in the next video.